So let's move towards the demonstration here, and I'm going to give an overview that will probably last about 15, maybe 20 minutes, and in that we're not going to be able to get every nook and cranny of the application, but it'll give you a sense for the specificity of a Syndix RE for the commercial real estate industry. The first thing that I would point out to you is that there are a number of personalities and personas that exist in today's commercial real estate organization, and what they want to see and what they want to view in the application greatly differs. So what we've done in the Dynamics version of a Syndix RE is personified these particular lines of business, like for instance tenant advisory, agency leasing, and such. And so someone who works with tenants to establish new leases and renewals of leases would drill into the tenant advisory area of a Syndix RE and have a streamlined experience that gives them visibility to only those aspects of the tool that are important to them. And in this particular example, simply conducting a search for a record that they may be doing business with. At the very root of CRM is contact and company management. And so in this particular example, we've done a quick lookup of an account that we may be working with, and it gives us a great deal of visibility at the corporate level, the relationship here, phone numbers, perhaps the SIC code, and other variable details that exist for the corporation, including where they're located in a map. In addition, we can take a look at what kind of conversation has happened in the past, as well as what might be scheduled in the future, along with some notes. And then on the right-hand side, as is the case with most relationships, is that we manage relationships with multiple people that work for those companies. And so we see that we've got a list of contacts that are available for us to access. And then in the lower right-hand corner, what we're all in the business of doing is making money, helping clients, and we do that through transactions and or what we call deals in a Syndix RE, and those are available here in the lower right-hand corner. Not much in the way of having to click around. Everything is very readily available to you and accessible for quick decision making. So as we navigate through to another area of the tool, that being the deals, you'll get a sense for what all is contained in that deal. So for instance, this happens to be a tenant rep deal where we're helping a tenant with a lease, and we see that we've got a number of details here, including what the new lease is. We've got some conversation going on here with the activities, but we see also that there is a property record that's been connected to this deal. They have an interest in Preston Park Financial Center. It's an office building, and there is an availability in Suite 250 that has struck a chord with them, and they're wanting to find out more information about that, perhaps going on a property tour, what have you. And so these collections of deals end up becoming a visibility tool for not only the broker individually, but also for the organization. Embedded in the deal also are what we call the responsible parties. Of course, the client or the prospective tenant here, and the contact that is the lead point of contact for that tenant, but also other interested parties, like for instance the listing broker, as well as the owner of that building and the contacts within, which are in and of themselves company and contact records inside of CRM. So you've got this really interrelated application that harvests all this information and organizes it in a way that you can make decisions off of. So as I mentioned, this is just one deal that, if rolled up, can actually show you a forecast of deals, as we see here. And what we've got is the ability to, as Chad had mentioned, graphically depict this information so that it speaks to us in a much more informative way rather than just a simple spreadsheet. And there are a variety of ways in which to chart and graph that information so that you can consume it and make business decisions on it. As we see here, we've got all open deals that are listed, and an attribute, as I showed earlier, is that each of them may have a property connected to them. So in a Syndix RE, to make this commercial real estate specific, we spent a great deal of time building out the property entity. Buildings, assets, maybe other ways in which you would describe this particular aspect of the Syndix RE solution, but ultimately we're describing a physical property here At the top level, where we've given it a name, it's got a physical address. We've got a latitude and longitude, which allows us to do some really interesting things with maps. As you can see here, a simple plotting is occurring. But you'll notice also that there are interested parties that have been enumerated: the owner, landlord, the contact there, the property manager, the contacts there, as well as the listing broker. And so no longer are we relegated to emailing someone or going to a separate system to find out who these people are that we need to contact that may influence my deal, but rather just go to the centralized CRM system that's been made commercial real estate specific to get to that information. So this is the top level information at the property, but there are also other details as well. In some cases, when we're tracking market properties that we're not as familiar with, it might be interesting to actually see images associated with these properties. And as Chad mentioned earlier, these images are not just for on-screen viewing, but can be used and incorporated into reporting as well as marketing tools like brochures. Amongst the images also is the ability to take a look at the leases, the active leases that are in the building. Who are the tenants? What's the lease rate, the commencement and expiration? This, up to this point, in some organizations resides somewhere in a back office tool and is really not accessible for a broker. And so now it's been made available into the CRM system for decision making and visibility. And in addition to the lease information, there's also availabilities. You know, what inventory is available in this property, so that if I do have a prospective tenant that has shown a distinct amount of interest in it, I can quickly present my market knowledge to the marketplace and give them that information, whether it be over the phone, via some sort of an email, or in front of them via mobile devices that we'll talk about here shortly. So this property has a conjunction of leases and availabilities, which allow us, as Chad mentioned earlier, to generate a visual stacking plan that reflects the current state of this particular property. We see that we've got a legend below that allows us to understand the lease expiration ideas around the leases that are current, as well as unused space. So these stacking plans we've found have spoken much more deeply and intelligently to brokers as they try to understand the state of this particular asset in the marketplace. If we go back to the availabilities in a scenario that is very common to the tenant rep broker, oftentimes after having gone through a property tour or just having had a discussion about an availability, that particular point of contact might desire to have something as a takeaway that they can share with other people that are involved in the organization in the decisions around leasing. And ultimately what we've tried to do is process flow the creation of a brochure or a microsite. And so in this example, we've gone from Preston Park Financial Center into the availabilities. And this particular tenant has expressed interest in Suite 920. And so we can go to a local menu here and select the Create Brochure facility, which at this point, I actually may have a login. Let me log back into this. And the brochure process works as follows. The administrator will have created a series of templates that will be made available for the broker, at which point they simply go to the availability that they want to push that brokerage into that template and actually perform this mail merging process. So we've got a quick login here, and at this point there's a handshaking going on between the CRM system and the actual brochure process. And so we select from a list of pre-existing templates that the administrator would have fashioned up what we want to put that data into. At this point, we've changed the template, we've already selected the availability, and now we click on the create process, and now the merging of all of that property and availability data and the images that you saw earlier are being fed into this template, so that we can either email it or print out a hard copy and hand that to that decision maker so that they can socialize this particular property and the availabilities within it with the other decision makers. And once we're finished with this, we can accept the defaults of what that publication process has rendered, or we can actually edit that particular byproduct as well. And that editing may result in maybe text edits where we want to highlight or accentuate certain attributes of the property, or it may be that we want to change some of the artwork here, and the graphics that we saw earlier are made available in this publication process so that we can maybe bring a nighttime photo into this that they can then see. And so there's an editing, there's a template tool up front, and then there's a runtime editing capability for the broker so that they can express their individuality in the transaction. So let's move to some other aspects of the tool. As you can appreciate, when you've moved companies and contacts and properties and leases and listings all into one database, you really need to have some rich searching tools to get to all of this information. And so we've brought forward a tool called the Advanced or Quick Search that allows us to take that data and express it in meaningful use case ways. And let me give you an example here where we grab say the properties template that allows us to go in and do searches on property attributes, and as you can see adjacent to that query by example area is a map. And so if we were to zoom out or zoom in, we can take that map in conjunction with some of these searching capabilities over here and come up with a result set. So let's grab, for example, all properties that are of type office that are in a certain radius from, let's just say, the middle of Amsterdam. And so I'm going to anchor my selection here and drag it out ever so slightly, at which point I can now perform a search. Having performed the search, it comes back and plots those properties, allowing me to see where they're located. And at that point, I can drill into any one of those and see the details about that particular property. So those searching tools are not only relegated to property searches, but we can also use them for searching for prospective tenants and investors alike. So in this particular case, I grabbed a property that I've been in the office of earlier this week and immediately went from a search drilling into and visiting images associated with that particular property. So that's a great example of one search scenario that we have available, and there are others as well. But what I would like to do at this juncture is actually migrate over to a mobile example that we have that I think really epitomizes the ability for us to leverage this data while out in the field. And so I'm going to reflect the image of my iPad on the screen here. There we go. And let's see if we're still logged in. So in this particular example, we'll see that we're highlighting the properties area of the product. There are a number of other navigation items on the left-hand side. You see companies, contacts, but imagine all of that information now being highly mobilized for your iPhone or iPad and being made available to you while you're in front of that client, whether it be an investor or tenant. So in this particular example, having access to your entire portfolio of property information on the iPad, I could go in and perhaps do a quick search on properties that are in, say, where I'm from, the city of Dallas. However, I could also use other methods of search, such as what we call faceted searches. And so I've taken my finger and I've swiped from left to right and I've exposed these facets that allow me to select details about the properties that I want to hone in on. And so in this case, I might say, let me just have all the properties that are in the Netherlands that may be, for instance, office properties. And at that point, I now have nothing but those properties in my list here. If I wanted to go back to a property that has a great deal of information about it in the database, I could actually go to, let me clear my filters here, and we're going to go back to the Preston Park Financial Center property, and I'll slide that back over. And you're now going to see the stacking plan on a mobile device. And so I can expand that particular stacking plan and make that highly visible here so I can go in and assess the state of the union on this particular asset without having to go back to the office. Chad mentioned also the ability for brochure creation on such a device. And so if I were to take the Preston Park Financial Center property and I depress that, it's allowing me to drag that over to the dashboard or the workspace, at which point I can now use the composition tool that I showed on the desktop and make a publication available without leaving their site. So in front of them, I get the request for the brochure. I actually take the property and the availability, select the template, and I do that all from right in front of them.